I'm Tyler, and this is the AntiSocial Network.
Don't look away. Let the fear wash over you.
Very compelling kind of a figure. Odd-looking duck. There's something about his eyes. Hypnotic.
A racist, a sexist, uncivil, worse than Hitler.
Welcome to your number one source of internet oddity.
This is the main thing about my listeners. They're masochists, and they listen to my show just for the pain.
Here we host conversations with interesting people across the internet.
This idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse.
Once I establish my theocracy, I will throw you in my dungeon and let you rot for it.
You haven't heard of them, but I have.
Doctor, turn off my cringe inhibitors.
Join us every Friday for discussions on culture, entertainment, politics, religion, and whatever happens to catch our fancy then.
Oh, my shrink was right. God does hate me.
You could bring civilization to Britain, but you could never bring Britain to civilization.
You globalist cock!
Social credit deducted.
You're probably thinking this is some pretty deep stuff, and you're right.
This week we are joined by Abby Libby. She is the host of Chatting with Abby over at the Daily American Press. We already had the editor of Daily American Press on just this past month, and now we have their other major contributor. How's it going today?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. It's midday through a Wednesday, so you know how you're starting to hit that malaise, but you're halfway there. So
yeah, halfway there, living on a prayer, all of that stuff.
We're just gonna start turning this into power ballad lyrics, aren't we? This is. So, how did you get involved with Daily American Press?
I heard via a friend that you're Tyler, that George over at Daily American was looking for a podcast host to kind of bring traffic to the website, and my friend Cactus, Real Truth Cactus on Twitter, knew that I had some interest in starting a podcast, and so she kind of connected us.
Okay, that's cool. I actually just I don't know if I don't think he'd care if I mentioned this, but I've been offering to let him syndicate some of my columns over at Daily American Press. So
That'd be awesome.
I don't have time to write original content, but I'm like, well, I have original content you can use. It's just there's not going to be any exclusivity to it, but I'm happy to let him use it to kind of bring some more attention to it. So
yeah, that would be awesome. He made some updates to the website recently, which were kind of spruced it up too. So kind of moving up in the world. Yeah,
it looks good. So yeah, everyone go subscribe to Daily American Press. It's good stuff. But I guess that's no holds bar on the topic. We're talking about the Alito leak from last week, which completely derailed my entire plans for the next 3 months. But it definitely was a interesting surprise to have that dropped on a Monday night, especially as a journalist, because suddenly my entire outline of stories was completely interrupted by the fact that I now had to write and complete at least 3 stories on the topic, just related to things happening in Middle Tennessee, let alone what's happening in the entire country. So, yeah, I mean, how do we want to jump into this? Do you want to kind of give a quick rundown on what happened, or how do you want to approach that?
Well, I think everyone knows that the leak happened, yes. And then a lot of people started freaking out for 2 different reasons, right? One, yay, abortion could start to be outlawed in states as states legislated away with the removal of Roe, or oh no, our abortions are going away. But also just that the leak happened in the first place. But of course, that's only a concern on one side of the aisle.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to, I don't want to pull the hypocrisy card on the left, because that's literally like the number one argument that conservatives make every single time the left says something, and doesn't do anything. But it is amusing watching the left go from our cherished institutions are being challenged to it's a good thing that we're about to destroy the Supreme Court, like overnight. That argument just became like, oh, good. The Supreme Court is it's now an extremist court, and we have to, pack it and use democracy to destroy it and harass all the judges until they do what the people say, because it's the people's house, according to one person on Twitter, which is the most hilarious thing I've heard in a while, because no one understands civics anymore. And I don't know. It's a lot. There's a lot has happened. Also not enough has happened because Chief Justice Roberts hasn't actually released the decision yet, even though he should, because he's just keeping the entire country in suspense for more reason than more time than he absolutely needs to.
Yeah, I mean, this draft is from February. So just given the danger that the conservative justices are in right now, I think it's almost morally wrong that it hasn't been released yet. I don't know what's going on over there. I don't want to pass judgment without having all the context that they're having, but I don't understand the delay.
Well, I would imagine two things. Complete butt pull assumption here, but I'm assuming that one, Chief Justice Roberts is completely chewed up time-wise with trying to plug the leak, and that's the thing that immediately jumped out to him was, okay, someone in this room is breaking all of their promises to not spread, unpolished judicial notes out to the press, which is a really big deal. And the other thing is that Roberts is a process person. He's obsessed with the process. It's very possible he's not going to do it just because he wants to go about his decision the way he would, assuming none of this had happened, which is a terrible idea because this is the kind of ruling that's going to they would end a term on, which if they really do wait till the end of their term, it could be months before the actual decision drops, which who knows what could happen by then. For all we know, one or two of the justices completely wimp out and the decision is reversed and nothing happens. Do you
think that could happen?
It could happen, but I don't know who would be the one that wimps, because I mean, obviously none of their jobs are on the line. But Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, none of them are going to get fired or anything. So it's not like they have a real incentive not to. I've heard that there's some people on the left calling for all three of them to be dragged into court for perjury on the claim that they during their Supreme Court hearings that they all said they weren't planning to go in to wipe out Roe, which is really iffy as far as that kind of thing goes.
They didn't say that. I watched the Barrett hearing.
Yeah,
right?
there's no actual chance that'll happen, but it's just the left likes to scream treason and perjury and everything every chance they get, because it's the easiest route for them to curb anything they don't like. I mean, lest we forget, 2 months ago they just tried dragging Clarence Thomas into court because his wife was apparently texting people on January 6th, which, as we know, he has besmirched the sainted sacrament of January 6th by being married to someone who questions it. So
I love how they're like, female empowerment. Men can't own women. Men shouldn't control women. And then the minute a conservative guy's wife does something they don't like, they're like, control your wife, man. Like,
that's not inaccurate. It's true.
It's insane. But they specifically didn't, at least Amy didn't answer one way or the other. Like, they made a big deal at the time about how she wouldn't answer whether she would overturn Roe or not. So I think it's a little bit wild that they're accusing her of perjury.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're gonna throw out every accusation they can just to see what sticks. There's really there's like I said, because even if there's no legal ground to go after Clarence Thomas, there's no legal ground to go after any of the Trump appointees. This is just a done deal. Like if obviously only one of them would have to flip their vote to change their mind. But if Alito wrote up a 70-page decision, that sounds like something that means that they're mostly along the way to it. Now, I mean, I don't know if it's common in judicial work to casually write up 70 pages to argue your precedent, or if Alito just so happened to have 70 pages of arguments for why they should overturn it. Yeah,
I wouldn't put it past him, to be honest.
That's very possible that he just had that he was just sitting on this argument, for however long he's been appointed, just waiting for the moment, which would be which is kind of funny, but. I doubt that kind of decision is made lightly, which they probably came. This vote probably happened in February, or possibly earlier. Who knows? It really depends if what's his name, the guy that's the new Biden appointee is replacing, if he voted on it or not, because I'm curious if it has the new appointee been brought onto the court yet?
I don't think she's been sworn in.
Okay, then that point is irrelevant then. Although I'd heard some weird conspiracy theory that apparently the left wanted to appoint her onto the court so that they could gum up the works and it would be a 5-5 vote, which, good luck with that. But it'd be kind of funny if it was. But
yeah, I think the thing that I heard that was the most possible concern is that the draft opinion is a really great, really hard line. And there are squishier positions that potentially maybe they settled for a squishier position to get the Roberts vote or something like that. But then again, like, if it had changed, why would the leaker have chosen this draft? If it changed between February and now, and the leak, why would he have chosen the earlier draft?
It really depends.
It didn't change.
I mean, it really depends. It's obvious the leak had everything to do with trying to put some pressure on the court. Like, we still don't know who the leaker was as of the moment. There's a lot of speculation about who it could have been, because really, when you count the numbers down, there's about 16 clerks for all the liberal justices who are likely to have done it, unless something really weird happens and it turns out to be like Robert's clerk or something, which doesn't make any sense. Or like, like Clarence Thomas's clerk somehow decides he wants to betray, which, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But really, there's like maybe 16 people that could actually have done it, and they're all progressive, and they all have history of pro-choice activism outside of their outside of their work. Will Chamberlain has a good thread on this where he suggested who he thinks it might be, but he didn't say for sure it is her, just that he thinks that the pattern is there for this person as a character profile being the person that would be, because really the only person that would do this is someone who's 100% sycophantic on abortion and who has the bravery and who actually has the ambition to do that.
I think it's the Sotomayor clerk, right? The strongest theory.
That sounds right, but I'd have to double check the Chamberlain thread. So
the one I saw, and I might have seen the same thread as you, where somebody kind of basically saying the same thing, was that there is a clerk, one of Sotomayor's clerks, who kind of fits the profile, as you said, but also has a known friendship with the guy who wrote the article. So that ends up, it's not quite a smoking gun, but it's getting there. But the other thing I wondered was, it makes sense, because Sotomayor is pretty much the most liberal person on the court currently. It makes sense that it would be a clerk of somebody who thinks that their boss is going to back them, instead of who thinks that their career is going to be destroyed forever. Because you don't simply clerk for the Supreme Court without having huge dreams for your future.
Yeah, that makes sense. Either way, that person is I remember one tweet that saw that that whoever did the leak, that guy's going to be working at Stanford in 5 years. Like he's gonna lose he's gonna be disbarred, but he's gonna become the guy. He's like, I'm the cool professor who, I'm this generation's deep throat. I leaked the most important leak in history of Washington. Like that guy's gonna get a book deal.
Yeah. The only way I think they have to know. I mean, I find it difficult to believe that they were able to arrest people who just showed up at January 6th within a couple weeks, and that they don't know who the leaker was. I think it's just a question of, is this person prosecuted?
It's a matter of time. It really depends if they use the official channels or not. Because if they were stupid enough to actually use their government email to leak something to the Politico, that would make it really easy to track. For the very simple reason that all government emails are publicly accessible. All you have to do is file a Freedom of Information request. So I assume if they did anything, they probably did it with their personal emails, which means that it's going to take time for the DC police to actually subpoena all of their private email accounts and their phone numbers and, get whatever kind of permissions they need. So who knows what that's actually going to happen. I would imagine Roberts is just storming around the Supreme Court right now, just kind of screaming at people, saying like, "Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it?" Like I could just see that in my head.
One of the worst appointments to the court, Roberts. Big mistake.
Yeah, I mean, he's disappointing for sure. I mean, and then again, I wouldn't care that he's not partisan, because ideally I don't want a partisan Supreme Court, but there's no way to really square that circle anymore, because every appointee is just either a hard left or a hard right appointee. There's no real in between. Maybe it'd be better if we had, as Knowles would say, 9 squishes on the court who just kind of read the document and say yes or no. But you never know. I don't know how you get that anymore. I mean,
well, I think that once the court was politicized, once they did start legislating from the bench, it's impossible to reverse bench legislation without people being political. If we get to the point where they don't legislate from the bench anymore and that's completely gone and they know they can't do that, then maybe we could have squishes and and they could just do law and it'd be fine.
I mean, that'd be the ideal, because I don't want to have a partisan arms race where the Democrats appoint 4 people to the Supreme Court and say we're creating a law that says you can never put any more else on the Supreme Court, but now there's a 4-person Democratic lead, and then the next Republican president comes in and says, I'm abolishing the law, we're adding 8 people to the Supreme Court, and they're all my appointees. And that's a really easy way to just absolutely gum up the works in Washington and make everything just even worse. And things are getting worse. Like, we don't need them to get worse, but they're going to keep getting worse anyways. So to the degree that we can kind of slow the thing down, I don't want to escalate it. But again, you're probably right. There's not really a clear. I don't know how do you clearly put up someone who's, just has a good record of being a good judge for the Supreme Court chair, unless another squishy president gets elected again, which who knows when that's going to be, because Trump and DeSantis are not squishes. And whoever the Democrats elect next is not going to be a squish either, so you never know.
And at some point, our society has forgotten how to define what a good judge is without it being politicized. So,
well, there's that.
Kind of where we're at.
So I guess moving in more into the direct policy kind of things is, I believe in listening to your podcast, you said you were from West Virginia. Is that one of the trigger states, or is that not?
But what do you mean by that?
There's 13 states right now that have laws called trigger laws on the books, which basically say that the moment Roe v. Wade is put into law, the abortion will be made legal within the state within 30 days.
Oh, okay. We have a prior law that would come back into effect unless something was done to block it. So It was a pro-life state, and then Roe ended it. So theoretically, it'll just kind of come back into play. But I'm a little bit squishy on the actual detail of that.
Who is your senator?
We have Manchin, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure who the other one is. I just moved here at the end of last year, so I'm just trying to get an idea of the politics of the state. All
right, I'd be curious if Manchin's your senator, because obviously he's going to be a big player in the next couple of weeks going forward, because if the Democrats actually do try to push any of their legislation forward, it's not going to get by Manchin because he's a Democratic senator in a red state, and that's a poison combination. So he can't go too hard, but he also has to pretend to be a Democrat. So
yeah, did you see? He said he wouldn't pass the codification law today.
I didn't catch that, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, he said it expands Roe instead of codifying it. I think if it was a clean codification, or if it was, he supports, I think, some abortion, but to a certain point. So I think he would vote for it if it was a squishy enough law, unfortunately.
Well, strictly speaking, the legislature is where you'd want to take a law like that, because having it the Supreme Court completely, the Supreme Court basically wrote a law into existence to defend abortion rights. So if they just legitimately wanted to, back down and be like, oh, this is we're just going to vote on it, that's technically the way you'd go about wanting to push a law like that. But I don't see anything like happening at the national level with this at the moment. Like everything that's happening right now is going to fall down to the states, because really that's where every single one of these battlegrounds is going to have to be fought. It's going to be every single individual providence is going to have to individually make up their rules and decide whether or not they want a Planned Parenthood active in their city or state or whatever. And that's the only really way that it's going to get fought reasonably, is, which I think is probably for the best. Like, obviously not a fan of abortion, but if we have to live in a state where abortion exists, I'd rather have it so that, you know, the blue cities can have it and the rest of the country that hates it can say, we don't want them here. We don't want, this doesn't represent our culture. This doesn't represent us. If you want to do it, you can go there, which I think is probably the fairest compromise you're going to get on something like that. Which, but even that, like, there's so much paranoia about that, because like, where I live in Tennessee, there's not a lot of abortion access. I think I did a big piece on the state activist level reaction to the leak, and Planned Parenthood of Mississippi and Tennessee did a press conference where they spoke to the fact that there's only about 6 clinics in the entire state where you can get abortions. And they pretty much said, like, you know, what the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to shut down the clinics. We're just going to turn the clinics into informational centers. And what we're going to do is basically create a pipeline where we ship people up to Southern Illinois so that they can get their abortions there. That way people in Tennessee can still get their abortions, which that's a pretty, I don't know if that's scummy. I don't know what that is, but, you know, it's better than having them here. I'd rather not have an abortion clinic downtown, or, you know, it is what it is.
I think one of the errors that conservatives make that liberals don't make, and that makes liberals so successful, is that liberals are willing to fight incrementally. They have pushed that slippery slope with homosexuality, or with, you know, any number of things. They'll say, okay, I just want this step. And even though that's not enough for them, they'll fight for their one step, their one baby step, and then they'll get it, and they'll fight for the next step. And a lot of times conservatives are like, if we can't pass legislation that we're completely happy with, if the legislation doesn't go far enough, if it still allows for some babies to die, then it's not good enough. We shouldn't even try. And so no one's willing to fight incrementally. And so because we don't even fight for those baby steps, we're losing the whole thing. And just not that lack of pragmatic thinking, where we can save a few lives by getting to this first step, and that'll make the next step even easier. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think the Republican Party has been pretty good on this issue, though. I mean, we've been clawing tooth and nail for 50 years now, trying to get every single inch that we can. I mean, Tennessee is, it's regarded as one of the more strict states on abortion. It's still available at the moment, obviously, because there aren't any states in the country where they've completely wiped it out. Maybe Texas in some areas, but not in like anywhere else. But obviously Roe hanging over the entire thing kind of means that there's really no way to fight it. But Tennessee, like, there's like at least half a dozen laws on the books that have been added within the last like 4 years, specifically on abortion issues, where they've limited basically everything. There's a 48-hour waiting period. You have to get an ultrasound beforehand. You have to, like, certain types of abortions are completely banned. Like, I think it's completely illegal after 12 weeks. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, they've been really tightening the chains on it for a while, and they've also been doing a really good job funneling money down into pro-life organizations. There's at least 2 major crisis pregnancy centers within half an hour drive of Nashville. I've done some work with them. They're really, like, they're very caring. They put a lot of effort out. There's a lot of pro-life organizers that go down into the Planned Parenthood and spend time outside them, you know, trying to talk to them, doing the infamous stuff. The Southern Baptist Convention is constantly putting money into pro-life stuff. Like, they just financed ultrasound machines for like every pro-life center in the entire state. Like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of effort, and people have to man those. So, like, I think that of all the issues, like, pro-life stuff has been really well done in terms of conservatives actually like going out and like inching for every little tiny inch to try to to win their way.
That's a good point. I guess I get a little bit discouraged when I'm seeing more and more conservative people and even pro-life people who have bought a lot of the core tenets of the pro-choice argument. It's like they've accepted all the foundation, they still have a pro-life structure built on top of this pro-choice foundation. For example, just completely buying the idea that pregnancy in and of itself is this horrible hardship, and making somebody have a child it's like they bought that, but then they're like, well, it's still murder, so we can't murder, and then making those exceptions for rape and things like that.
Yeah, but it's definitely an area too where principle is great, but when rubber meets the road, people show themselves. Like H Bomber Guy just had a tweet a couple days ago where he pointed out one of the most pro-life people he knew in his personal life. The moment he knocked up a woman, he immediately dragged her to a Planned Parenthood and aborted it. Like,
yeah,
there are a lot of people who, when put under pressure of, oh my gosh, I've just made a huge mistake. This woman is pregnant. My life is going to change forever. X number of...
make it go away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
X number of circumstances that could come about this. Like, okay, maybe you're married and you didn't realize that you were going to get someone pregnant, or you had a fling with someone you don't want a relationship with, or this person is abusive, or like any number of excuses that, put you in a state of mind where it says, I don't want to be in this situation. And it's understandable to a degree. I understand, like, you being in this position where it's like, I don't want to, I'm not at a point in my life where this is right. But at the same time, that one concern throws out the entire ethical consideration of the situation, which is kind of the whole the problem with the progressive argument. I mean, I remember when I read Bell Hooks, she talks about in her book, Feminism is for Everyone, how, abortion is like the most important issue for feminists. It is like the entire their bedrock of their entire philosophy, because not having the ability to choose when they can give birth effectively limits women's ability to express themselves sexually, express themselves in the home, and all. It's essentially the way that feminists give women total control over their bodies and their lives, because without it, they don't think that women can live lives that are worth living. And as a result of that, you see all the bile spilling out of the pro-choice movement, which the post-term abortion bills in California, the people saying late-term pregnancy bills in leftist states, where if you know anything about late-term abortion, that's a really nasty process. It's like this principle is a really bad foundation. It's an understandable foundation because it's emotional and apparent, and it's really easy to imagine yourself in that frame of mind where it's like, oh gosh, I don't want to do this. But it just leads to this complete ethical breakdown.
There's a lot of things in life where something happens and you want to find a way to make it not true. Like someone dies and you're like, I want to make that come untrue. And I think that as long as abortion is legal and accepted, that not only do we need to make it illegal, we need to figure out how to turn public opinion against it completely, because as long as it is seen as a viable out, it will be taken, because those situations are super awful. Sometimes they are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I know people that have been in those situations and go through that, because everyone knows someone at some point in their life that, knocks up a woman and suddenly their entire life is destroyed, which that happens in every community. It happens all over the place, and it's sad, but it happens, and you kind of have to just deal with it, and everyone kind of has to circle around those people and help them build up their life, which is, I think, what the best parts of the pro-life movement generally do. I mean, whenever I've talked with crisis pregnancy centers and churches and such, they go out of their way to describe, the left was like, oh, you only care about babies until they're born. It's like, well, the crisis pregnancy centers are like, we provide everything. We'll give you free stuff, free food, free counseling. We'll put you together with a community. With therapy. We'll give you everything you possibly need for free, and we'll do it just because we want to do it. And obviously, the pro-choice movement just doesn't respect that line at all, because they're like, oh, they just hate women. They want them, barefoot and pregnant. They don't actually care about women. So
yeah, they like to pretend the crisis pregnancy centers don't exist and that those resources don't exist. They like to pretend that parents who are desperate for a baby to adopt, because there's a lot of children in the foster care system that they like to point out, but those are older children. When it comes to babies, most couples aren't necessarily prepared to adopt a 9-year-old in the foster care system with a lot of issues, but they would really, really like to adopt the baby. And there's not all that many babies. They end up waiting for a long time. So, for someone that gets knocked up, really all they have to do is whatever the inconvenience of the pregnancy itself is. If they're willing to give the baby up to a loving family who's desperate for a child, then the problem does go away as soon as those 9 months are over.
I was actually just talking to I'm working on a profile right now of a local woman in Nashville who she got really famous over the last week because she decided she wanted to, talk. I'm going to talk about my abortion story, and I spoke with her for about 10 minutes today about letting her talk, and she's like, at one point she said a couple things that were really revealing. And the one that really struck me was, my growing up Catholic, I personally had issues with the idea, but I said, if I discover it before I'm 6 weeks pregnant, that's the cutoff line morally for me. And I'm like, why? So I didn't.
So arbitrary.
I didn't press her on it because obviously I'm just kind of there to report what she's saying, and I don't really, I don't want to pick a fight with someone. But it was such a strange little line where she's like, "Oh, it's like this is so important to us," and the lines get so arbitrary. It's fascinating to watch them argue for stuff. I remember the same Planned Parenthood representative I viewed last week said something along the lines of, we're so proud that so many women of color come to us in their time of need, and Alito will turn around and say what is it, like half of black babies are aborted?
It's so high.
I have black friends who genuinely call that a genocide. Like, this is what's actually happening, and the pro-choice movement's like, look at all the black kids being aborted. Isn't that great? We're really helping black women. I mean, that is this is the kind of moral argument you have to be in the bubble to understand. Because from the outside looking in, I'm like, you are just you're pro-genocide. You're doing a great thing in your own brain right there, aren't you?
Yeah. I think that the more we can take the things the left values and say, look how you are denying and harming your own value. Like, you say you value black communities, and disproportionately, their favorite word, black babies are being aborted. How does that make you feel that black communities are being driven to extinction by abortion fanatics?
Literally, the census just said that their numbers dropped from 13% of Americans to 12% in the past 10 years because they're not having kids. They are actively aborting themselves out of existence. It's insane. And somehow we're the white supremacists, but
somehow.
Oh well. I mean, I don't expect leftists to learn anytime soon. It's like arguing with entropy. There's really no point to it. But we'll see what actually happens in the next couple months. But are you hopeful at the moment? What are your thoughts? What do you think about the near future?
Yeah, I think I'm really hopeful. I'm worried for the justices. I think that this could go sideways really fast if, God forbid, something really bad happened and someone was assassinated or whatever. But I don't think that they would have voted, without counting the cost. So I don't see anyone flipping. And I think that we move really fast in a really good direction as soon as the decision actually comes down.
Well, then the real fight happens. But, there's 2 days between when we're recording this down and when this podcast goes up, so you never know what actually might have happened. It's like I said when I did my Ukraine war podcast. There's a distinct possibility that the world will end in nuclear fire in the next 2 days, but you never know. But we shall see. I guess I have to wrap up on my end, but do you want to shout out your stuff and where people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at AbbyLibby _ That's 4 B's total, ABBY _. My anchor link is in my bio, and then dailyamericanpress.com is where you can find all of George's articles, and my podcast is there as well.
There you go. Definitely go subscribe to Daily American Press and go listen to our podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. It was good to finally talk to you.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
The AntiSocial Network is a Groupthink Productions and cultural review podcast. Editing, hosting, and producing are by Tyler Hummel, art by Crystal Cali, and original music is composed by Guap Squad Gang and Melissa Lafira. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below and tell us anyone you think would be a good guest for the show. Thank you for listening.